Hello everyone, it is a delight to be here with Glen and we're going to tell you all about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, because we may or may not have played it.
Yeah, we've played a little chunk of it. This is the second time we've had a go on this now, isn't it? We played a bit a few months back in London, and we played another part of the game now, a part called Fury Green, I believe was the location.
It was. We played Fury Green, and we've got a load of footage. We've got a lot that we can actually discuss to bring you quite an extensive preview.
So what do we now know about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond? Well, let's find out. In terms of story then, I mean, we can't go too far into it. We've only seen snippets, but from the few bits that we have seen so far, it looks as if Samus is called to assist the Federation in a battle on a particular planet. Seems to relate around some sort of artifact. Now, the level we played took place after this, when Samus was alone for a short period, so it looks as if things obviously go awry, and in classic Metroid tradition, you lose your abilities and need to start building yourself back up as you go through the game.
One thing we could deduce is that there's a split narrative, so although, as Glenn mentioned, you do have that going on, there's also a split narrative that seems a little deeper, that ties the whole experience together.
So let's move on to gameplay then, and I mentioned that we played in an area called Fury Green, which was jungle-like in its presentation. And what was clear quite early on is that, as has been tradition with these Prime games, obviously they are first-person shooters, but they are far more puzzle-based when it comes to what you'd expect from a first-person shooter normally.
Yeah, Samus gains the ability to use psionic powers, so she can essentially move things with her, well, I don't know, her mind, however it works, and many of the early puzzles will revolve around that feature. It also allows her to fire out a ball of energy, which you can directly control. Now, this was an interesting test of mouse mode, because straight away, I found myself inherently going to that mode, and it instantly switches, allowing you to control it more precisely.
Yeah, you'll need to use this power to unlock a lot of the early doors in this particular stage at least. As Mark said, you can control a ball of light at times and use this to your advantage to get through small crevices and perhaps a flicker switch that otherwise you wouldn't be able to reach. As well as this, at times you'll need to follow a pattern on screen, almost drawing runes to open doors. So this all ties into the puzzle element that I mentioned a moment ago.
It's nice to see them give a variety of different control options. You've actually got like a semi-automatic gyro that kicks in if you want to use gyro for some of the aiming, but you can go into the menu and set it to gyroscopic controls all the time if you want to. Those puzzles weren't as easy as I thought they would be we don't know where in the game this falls, but they're quite challenging. They really do make you think about the environment. They also double down on the idea of scanning everything in the world to give you more clues. But yeah, Glenn, I had to ask you a couple of times for some of them.
Yeah, sometimes it's the puzzles themselves. Other times it may be that there's a small area that you'll only be able to get to by going into morph ball mode, and it's quite easy to overlook it when you're searching for where to go next. I did like the inherent lack of hand-holding, bearing in mind that it is a bit of a Nintendo-ism to want to tell you everything quite early in a game. Again, perhaps this takes place a little bit later on and we weren't playing it in any sort of chronological order, but I did like the fact it just let you discover things by yourself.
Yeah, it did remind me very much of the Prime Remaster that we had on Switch 1. It just feels like it has the same DNA, which I think will make a lot of people happy. We were introduced to a new character. There's a guy called Mackenzie who pops up, like a soldier for that group, was it, that you were talking about?
It wasn't explicitly stated. If it was, I must have missed it. But yeah, you come across him a little way into this level. He's got himself kind of stuck and he needs a bit of rescuing, and then he tags along with you. Now, again, we only played a bit of this level and he was only in that level for half of it. So I don't know how important he's going to be to the plot, but he was clearly there for comic relief. I'm going to be honest, I didn't need it in a Metroid game. You know, like if you go way back, Metroid was always a silent protagonist and the games were very much about isolation. Then you moved into games like Other M on the Wii, where Samus developed a voice and you had a lot of spoken story, and a lot of people didn't like it. And I just don't think you need comic relief in a game like this, me personally, you know?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think there's nothing wrong with having other characters within the world that you help out, and like there's an escort section that we played where you have to explicitly keep them alive and they can die if you don't. But having them natter away, if it goes on for the whole game, I'm going to really struggle. But it doesn't, I'd hope it wouldn't.
It just felt a bit like a buddy cop movie, you know, when you've got like the gruff one, then you've got the sidekick comedy character that keeps getting on their nerves. It gives me that sort of vibe without Samus ever really saying anything back. It just, I don't see that it's important that you have a character to bounce off, because Samus doesn't really talk, you know? It just feels, it's a part of the game that I'm a bit disappointed I've now seen, almost.
Yeah, I think my brain's a little different in that the PC games that I've played in the past, they've done this many times. So my brain was, you'll see in the footage, it knew what was going to happen. It knew the pacing of it, and it was fine. It was only like a 5-minute section. But I think for some, like you say, that shift towards having to think about that may become something that they don't enjoy as much as the solo experience.
Yeah, and obviously we don't want to harken on. It's only a small part of what we've seen. But if it's the missions and it's bits like that, that's fine. For me, it's more the comedy aspect of it just felt so out of place and just felt so unnecessary. But I may be in the minority there.
With that said, the solo side of things is still very much there. The experience of solving those puzzles, scanning those environments, and then eventually facing some rather big enemies, it feels just as good to me as it did in the previous game that I played.
Yeah, we fought a couple of bosses, and one in particular where you'll start to use some of these new powers that you've acquired, so you can slow down your bullets and control them. And we kind of mentioned this in terms of being able to go through gaps and crevices. Well, you can do the same thing when an enemy, say, has multiple weak points that have to be hit in quick succession. And again, it was a nice way of showcasing the new ability that you've picked up, and I'm sure there'll be more abilities as you move through the game that again have their uses, not just in terms of battle, but in terms of the puzzle solving too.
Yeah, I think it's always good game design where they feed the new mechanic, the new skill, the new power into those boss fights. It does semi-force you to use it, you know, like to succeed. I tried desperately without it, and I was like, hang on, something's not right here, and then it clicks, and you're like, oh, okay. I do like that, and it did it in the last game as well, I seem to remember. I remember fighting, it's like a snake or something in the middle of an area, and I had to use a certain skill. So yeah, I do like it. So far, that side of things is looking quite good. What do you think about the controls?
Well, I played the vast majority of it using the mouse, and it worked very well. You know, I've not ever really been a PC gamer, certainly not for first-person shooters, so I've always played with a controller, or obviously in more recent years with gyro aiming, but that mouse was it just felt so good, you know, and anyone that's played these sort of games with a mouse in the past, it'll be nothing new to them, but for someone that is more of a console gamer, it just showed how good the Switch 2 could be with that implementation.
Yeah, the weird thing is as a PC gamer, I didn't use the mouse for most of it. Like I used the standard and gyro just to see, you know, just to give like a different flavor.
Yeah.
And that was almost just as good, to be honest. It does have really heavy use of lock-on mechanics. So it kind of really locks you to the enemies by the pull of a trigger, but then it gives you that freedom of movement with the right joycon if you want to do nuanced aim for the gyro. So I think it's a really good implementation of controls so far from what we've seen across the board.
Yeah, and another thing that I've always liked about the Metroid Prime games is how they can feel like first-person shooters, but they do feel quite different at the same time. And you mentioned the boss just now and having that new bullet or way of attacking him, but also the amount of times you have to go into morph ball mode and jump over attacks and things like that. It does just keep this series feeling fresh against, you know, a huge stack of other first-person shooters.
What do you make of the mapping? Because in the old game, I did struggle at times to figure out where I was going. The map was a little difficult to read. Have they gone for a similar system?
The map in the first Prime game was like a wireframed map, and it looked impressive in terms of being in that space theme. It wasn't very intuitive. This is a more traditional map from what we saw. What we didn't see, and what I do wonder whether it's in there or not, is any sort of fast travel system.
Yeah, we didn't get to play the fabled bike, which I'm sure lots of people will be wondering about. But I mean, when we look at the trailer for that, you can see the area that's within. We didn't see the bike within this stage. So obviously we're playing a whole level, including a boss. What I think we can say is that you're not riding the bike around the levels.
No,
it doesn't work that way, does it?
No, it doesn't. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more of a means to get to points in some sort of, I don't know, like hub stage. Do you know what I mean? Rather than being an intrinsic part of levels themselves.
All right, that's probably a good time to chat about the visuals, Glenn. What did you make of it? Because we obviously played the Switch 2 version. What did we make of the overall look?
Well, again, obviously we've only seen one area this time round. I did love the aesthetic of it, of this particular part of the game. It was this huge jungle with almost like an Aztec design in terms of buildings and what have you that you came across. I just said to Mark off the microphone a minute ago, it reminded me a little bit of something like Predator. You know, in terms of being in that jungle and having these creatures attacking you. I don't know what you think about the actual graphical fidelity of it. I'm sure you're better placed than me to speak about that, but I did love of the overall look, you know, more than the sum of its parts. I thought it looked great.
Yeah, we were able to try, like, it has a few modes. So you've got like a high quality mode and you've got a performance mode that runs at 120 FPS with a slightly lower resolution. But it looks and runs to me very much like the game that I played for the remaster. You know, there are some elements, like there's some larger open spaces, there's the Predator style area that Glen was talking about where you can see the forests and things in the background, but essentially that's just a skybox. Like a nice looking skybox, albeit, but nothing that's going to make you think this is a exclusive Switch 2 game, in my opinion. And that's absolutely fine, because artistically and in terms of performance, everything that you'd want is there. The only element, visually, I guess you could kind of call it, is the variety of enemies. From that one level, there wasn't a huge variety of enemies, very much like a bug type design, weren't they?
They were, and again, without having full details of what the story is and who these enemies are, it's hard to comment as to whether they are exclusive to this one area or whether they are the overriding foe that you'll come across, not including bosses, of course. So yeah, in terms of what we saw, there wasn't a huge amount of variety there. I hope there is more. I hope you do come across more enemy types. But yeah, I think I agree with you, really, that it doesn't do anything mind-blowing, but it's with what it does, it creates a world that looks like one you want to go and explore.
The sound and audio was absolutely fine. Like Glenn said, with the comic relief character, that's going to be a matter of personal taste, but the overall sound palette, once again, felt really in keeping with the remaster from the same team.
Yeah, I'd go further back than that, actually. It's got a lot of the classic beats that Metroid has always had, going all the way back to the NES, certainly the Super Nintendo in Super Metroid, but obviously it does it this time, or has done it in the last few iterations, with that orchestral feel to it.
Yes.
And it does, you know, I've said before with orchestral soundtracks, I do lament the loss of classic video game music, but when you have something like this, which is basically a space opera, it's ideal, isn't it?
Space opera, I like that. Good stuff. All right, let's finish with the final thought then. What is your overall takeaway so far?
Overall, I mean, this new level hasn't really shown me much that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting it to be quite puzzle-based, based on the previous games in the series. I was expecting it to run very well. It was nice to see the two different performance modes or options in terms of what you can have, performance or the higher graphical specs. And again, it was nice to get on board with the mouse controls and see how well they work. But yeah, it's clearly a very polished game. Things like story, it was hard to get a handle on. I wonder how convoluted the story's going to be. But and obviously that character, that comic relief character, is kind of just, I don't know, it's just knocked it down a little bit for me. I hope he does one after a while. But it's clearly a very good game.
Yeah, for me, my takeaway is it's more puzzle based than I thought it would be. So I'd say it was maybe 50-50 puzzle combat from what we played. I really liked the mechanics that they've gone with overall so far from what I've seen. I was pleased to see the bike not in the stage. So it's very much traditional. I think a lot of players will just fit right into it. You're just going to pick it up and know what to do, know how this plays, and it has that same feeling from the previous game, at least the Switch one that was released. That I think, yeah, most players are going to be quite happy with that.
Lovely stuff then. That's our take on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, based on obviously this new level that we've been able to try. Let us know your thoughts on what you've seen. Are you looking forward to it? Stick it all in the comment section below. Don't forget, if you're looking for eShop credit to pick anything up, you can use our website switchup.gg to get your eShop cards, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cash back. We've also got our second channel these days, of course, SwitchUp Extra, where we do longer form content and just have a general chat about some of the newer releases. I'll put a card to that in the top right hand corner. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.